Yep, that should work. Okay. We have mic live. We have sound live. See if we can get some stories going on here. Let's see. Cause you didn't feel the same way about me, and it's eating me alive all of the time. So I'd rather keep my distance from you. You don't gotta lie to me to get through. Push and pull me off into the deep end, and let's pretend that nothing ever happened on that night. Alright, so I'm just setting up the stream, folks. It's going to be a little while. Adding window capture. So I need to check. I'll have my there we go. Great.
I don't know what you want. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall.
There we go. So, I'm gonna post my Discord in the chat as soon as I can get things working. Okay. And I don't want the copyrighted video. I just want the uncopyrighted video. Alright. Let's get this working.
Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain. Tonight we gonna let it rain.
Alright. Need to pop out the chat. Okay. Now finally the Discord.
Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down.
Alright.
Tonight.
So, we can go to TPUSA right now. Let's see. I still haven't posted the stream everywhere. Just search by upload date in order to get the actual result. Mephistopheles says, look up the awesome Israeli dance move. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that Israeli dance move. It wasn't much of a dance move. It was more like people standing around pointing at some smoking towers. But, yeah, people made a big deal out of it. I wonder why. I wonder what could have possibly motivated them to make a big deal out of it. But I guess we'll never know. Alright. So how's our thing going? There we go. So, we can watch the whole Q&A. It'll be interesting.
And again, if you disagree, come to the front of the line.
Uh-oh.
Let's
It's way more quiet.
have some mutual respect. And again, audience, please don't boo. If you hear something you don't like, we're not the left. We're not going to shout people down. We're going to have a discussion of ideas.
Great.
And are we ready to get started? Okay, let's get started.
Hi, Charlie. Welcome to the best state in the union, Ohio.
The Ohio State University.
So my question is, if the president were to enact a policy that would completely benefit the United States and her citizens, would you support it?
Well, I think
but to the detriment of Israel. Would you support it, yes or no?
Well, that's a false choice. Thank you for being here. I get a lot of questions about Israel in the last week. I will not apologize for my defense of our greatest ally in the Middle East. I will not apologize for the fact that I defend Israel against its critics both domestically and abroad. And I'm always just very puzzled at times when I get the amount of attention that is on the only democracy in the Middle East, the only place where all three monotheistic religions are allowed to peacefully visit their religious sites, the place that has respect for human rights, the place that the Knesset has representation for all three monotheistic religions, something that does not exist all throughout the Middle East.
Not to mention the only pro-gay place in the Middle East, by the way.
Yeah, so Rob, let's talk about that. How would most Middle Eastern countries treat you if they found out you were gay?
Let's see. You know, they can be like Iran, and they can force gay men to transition into women. They can be like other places in the Middle East where they stone gays to death in the streets, and they throw us off rooftops. And these are very real things that continue to happen. And so when I hear those criticisms of being pro-Israel that are coming from the left, that's really shocking to me. And this is why I call it the intersectionality cult, and this is why I say that intersectionality makes zero sense, because you have so many criticisms coming to Israel from the left, and Israel is the most pro-gay place in the Middle East. It is the only place where gays can be, it is the only place where gays can be open to be who they are without fear of being murdered for their sexual orientation.
And then to just answer your hypothetical that has no concrete example to this day, if any country would ever support a position that would be against our own interest, I would not support that.
So there you see that he actually answers the question, which I didn't even catch that in the initial back and forth. I didn't catch that he actually answered the question and said I would not support something that helps Israel but hurts the United States. Why does he have? Oh, here's Josh. Oh, got burned trying to join my Discord. Let me see if I can get this working. So I'm gonna post the Discord invite in the chat. This should be the current invite. So here we go. There we are. Yeah, it surprised me, but yeah, he did answer the question. Because what the impression that I'd gotten was that Charlie Kirk dodged, and he just said, I like Israel. He didn't say what he would do if there was a conflict. But here.
And then to just answer your hypothetical that has no concrete example to this day, if any country would ever support a position that would be against our own interest, I would not support that. However, time and time again, Israel, and Rob, can you second this? They helped you when you were a veteran in Iraq with intelligence, supply lines, medical assistance.
Absolutely.
You know, when you were there. And so they stood side by side our efforts. And look, I was against the Iraq war, but I am glad that they helped you, you know, when our...
Right. So, yeah, basically, you have him answer the question in the affirmative, saying, yeah, or in a very clear way, saying, if there is to be a conflict of interest, then I'm on the side of America. Which is not a surprise. That's kind of broadly the position of conservatives. It's just, it seems to be a vocal minority that says otherwise.
Servicemen and women went overseas there. And so I'm answering your, you know, unlikely hypothetical with that answer. And I'll say this as final. I wish that the amount of attention on college campuses, there was 0.1% of the attention on other countries in the Middle East that Israel seems to always get, the only democracy, the only free enterprise country, and the country that most supports values that are closest to America. So
yes.
Thank you so much for your question. We appreciate you being
Thanks.
here tonight. So thank you so much. Thank you. We'll go to the next question. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, this is for Kirk.
Okay.
I watched the debate you had with Kalinsky over the weekend.
Oh, you were just outside.
I was, yeah.
Okay, great. Welcome. Thank you.
So I had two quick questions, and I will try to make them brief. So the first one, we were talking about the taxes, and Kalinsky brought up that he asked maybe rhetorically why the tax cuts for the working class weren't permanent. And you said Republicans in Congress tried to make the tax cuts permanent, and the Democrats objected to it. They filibustered it, and they never allowed it to happen.
Right.
So I looked it up afterwards, and it went through budget reconciliation. So it wasn't possible for it to be filibustered, and so the Democrats actually had no power to make those tax cuts temporary, and instead of the corporate tax cuts. And
So you're technically correct.
so
A better
my
word than
question
filibuster
is
should
not
have been
trying.
they killed it.
My question is not trying to be like.
That's a very technical question, but you're correct. I should have said they killed it. They didn't filibuster it. You're technically correct.
Okay.
So I concede that point.
Okay. So why would, if the Democrats had no power to make them?
No, but they did in the House. So it's been reintroduced in this House of Representatives, and the Democrat House hasn't passed it. Nancy Pelosi.
they don't. It was passed before the 2018 elections. The 2017 tax bill was passed before the.
No, okay, I totally agree with you on this. Again, this is going over the heads of 90%.
So let's engage with the chat here. Hey Josh, good to see you on the stream. Eliza here says he's okay with the replacement of traditional white vote, but the replacements just have to have papers. Well, he's advocating a fairly radical immigration restrictionist position, as far as I can tell. This Charlie Kirk individual, he's saying, I want less immigration. I want very strong security on the southern border, and so that position, coupling less legal immigration with much more enforcement of our immigration rules, that's like pretty much the immigration restrictionist position in America. You're not going to see very many people go further than that, and so I don't see why he would be the target. If you're worried about people who are not anti-immigration enough, Charlie Kirk seems like he's a pretty decent specimen in that regard. There's not like a huge constituency of people who are more anti-immigration than the people who say build a wall and go after the sanctuary cities. Those two things alone make you more anti-immigration than I think the majority of the electorate. And that's not a bad thing.
Super technical, but let me explain it to the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what happened. Big tax cut passed in 2017, and there were some tax cuts that were permanent and some that were not permanent. My stance is that all the tax cuts, including the middle-class tax cuts, should have been permanent. It was a mistake not to make the middle-class tax cuts permanent. So let me finish.
Okay.
So then, to fix that mistake, the Republicans in Congress reintroduced a bill that failed. Some Republicans voted against it. A lot of Democrats voted against it, to try to make those middle-class tax cuts permanent. It is my stance that those tax cuts should be permanent.
Perfect. So my question is, why would the Republicans not make them permanent in the first place and try to rely on the Democrats? Why did the Republicans?
There was some. That's a great question. I don't support it.
May I please finish? Why did the Republicans?
I can't speak for why the Republicans do what they do. So
okay, you're a political figure. Could
okay, how about this? Why didn't any Democrats?
Do you? I mean, one of the biggest things that annoys me is when you have to.
It's not a question. You're giving a speech with an upward inflection.
The thing. So here's the thing, and let me jump in right now. What really irritates me is when you are forced to answer for every single thing some Republican somewhere said or did. I get annoyed by that.
So let me speculate. Okay, so let me speculate.
May I answer that? May I please stage the question?
No, you can't answer.
You've been staging the question for like 10 minutes.
Answer the question. May I please stage the question?
All right, let me finish, and we'll go to the next question.
No, I haven't even posed.
Look, there's a 100-person. There's a 100-person line.
If you would let me pose the question,
So
you could answer
allow me to answer your question.
You don't even know what my question is.
Because it took you 10 minutes to get there.
I'm literally reading it right now.
Okay, we're going to go to the next question. Here's the thing. 0 Democrats voted for the largest tax cut in American history. I don't know why no Democrats
This
did
isn't
that.
a safe space. This
Thank
is
you.
cool. If you wanted to ask the question, get it together. You've been here for 10 minutes, dude. Move on. I'm sorry. Like, we will sit here and answer every question you have, but get the question ready when you come up here, bro.
I literally have the question.
Let's
Next
go.
question.
Next
Thank
question.
you so much.
Yeah. So as far as I could see, that was a fairly strong response from Charlie Kirk, just saying I can't answer for everything. As far as my major problem was with the Democrats stopping that legislation from happening. Maybe he could have been more. Well, yeah. I mean, it's difficult to say more than that, right? At that point, you're kind of locked in, and there's very little else that you can really do because he can't answer for every political move that the Republicans make. You can just say, I disagree with it, but I have bigger disagreements with the other party. And really, in politics, you find that that's the most you can say in a lot of situations.
I swear.
And by the way, if anyone wants to take the other side, then they can join the Discord. I have a link in the chat right now, and this link will take you to the voice channel where you can put yourself on stream. All right. Josh Randall in the Discord says, yeah, the people are talking past each other. I agree. Like, largely what you see in this Q&A is that things have to remain unsaid. Like, the fundamental position of the people asking the questions cannot really be openly stated, and so it has to be implied, and then Charlie Kirk will either speak to the implication or speak as is convenient for him, which is the tendency. One of the things about debates and discussions is that if you let the other person set the terms, then you're going to lose most of the time. You have to have a certain amount of control over where the conversation goes. Now, let's see. So until I get someone in the Discord, I'm going to just make the YouTube video the entire perspective here. And we'll just have that. Beautiful.
You need to find one.
Much
Be
more
quick,
than
straight
him.
to the
I will. Somebody outside a protester was asking about the term culture war. It's got a long history, started late 1800s, Otto von Bismarck, Kulturkampf. In the late 1990s, mid-1990s, it was reclaimed by conservatives. One of those being E. Michael Jones, who actually started this magazine, Culture Wars magazine, and because of his fantastic work, we now understand. Thank you. Give it up. Because of E. Michael Jones' groundbreaking work, we now understand that sexual liberation is political control. It's a form of political control. And you have multiple times advocated on behalf of accepting homosexuality, accepting homosexual acts as normative in the conservative movement. How does anal sex help us win the culture war?
I'm going to let...
Right. This is where I clashed with Alex earlier on, where Alex was saying, why anal sex? Why anal sex, Kyle? It's just profoundly strange for that question to come out. Like, it's a very weird question. If you're asking about gay people, you can just ask about gay people. To bring up the specific act isn't required, and it's frankly very strange. And it's something that happens a lot in these circles, where they'll get weirdly specific about the sexual acts that they object to, or that they supposedly object to. It's very unusual, and I think it just gives you a really icky feeling.
Wait a minute. So can I ask you a question? Can you have the balls to ask the gay man on the stage that question and don't defer to him? Ask me that question. I will answer you that question.
How does...
Elizier, let me see if I can get this. Thing is, I'm looking at the chat through the stream, and so it's very blurry. Okay, so Elizer says, let's not argue the way he phrased the question and focus more on the message. Okay, so let's. Why should gay people be in the conservative movement? Why should they not be excluded? The major reason, in my view, is just that gay people are very prominent in terms of political theory. You'll have gay people are more involved in politics than straight people, like as a proportion, because gay people have more time. So straight people are more likely to be busy with kids than gay people are, and so you'll have more gay people than you would expect given the population involved in politics, and then in addition, they're disproportionately rural, and so urban rather, and so they form a faction which is relevant. There was a time when ignoring them was a savvy move, but at this point, that isn't a savvy move, regardless of what you think of its morality, and so Jim Johnson says, so you're not conserving, and that's a fact. Essentially true, right? So what you mean by conservative, Jim Johnson, is you mean someone who is traditionalist. And I am not traditionalist, and the conservative movement generally is not traditionalist. And Christians generally are not traditionalist. If what you want is traditionalism, then you're in a difficult position in America, because America has not been traditionalist for a very long time. Elazier says homosexuality is not a conservative value. No, but nobody's saying that it's a conservative value. It's just the question is whether you want to tolerate them or not. And if the answer is no, then let that be your answer. But you can't waffle on this. You can't be like, well, maybe I'll kick them out later. If you're going to build a movement with people, then you have to decide, like flat out, am I going to let homosexuals in or not? If you let yourself waffle on that subject, if you say gays are welcome, but then change it to unwelcome, there's nothing to stop you from doing that with other groups as well. So once you've welcomed them into your group, if you want to unwelcome them, you basically have to start a new group. You have to say, okay, I was wrong. I'm going to start an entirely new group that does not involve any gays at all. Is that worth doing? Not in my view. And I also don't think that if I was starting a new movement, I would exclude gays from it. I don't see why. I don't see why I have to do that. I make a huge amount of enemies, and I don't make any valuable friends to my knowledge, right? This faction, which is represented in these questions, does not seem to be very productive in politics. So that's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing that groups that embrace gay people or groups that do not reject gay people seem to be more successful than groups that do. And beyond that, like the only reason that I would flat out reject anybody, any category of people, is if there was some overwhelming need to do so. And I don't see such an overwhelming need in the case of homosexuals. Jim Johnson says, tradition means the past. Can you conserve anything but the past or what has already been? Well, you can conserve rights. You can conserve freedoms. You can conserve systems. And so there's plenty to conserve beyond, social conservative / traditionalism. And incidentally, I would describe myself as being a social conservative. I'm not socially liberal. I'm hostile to feminism. I'm hostile to attacks on marriage and the family. And so there are places where I stand opposed to the majority of gay political activists, but that does not mean that I see a need to exclude gays entirely. Josh Randall says you can conserve tried and true values. Right. And where I would focus is on marriage, right? So we've seen the undermining and destruction of marriage, not through gay people, but through religious people changing its definition, right? They've taken all the bite out of enforcement and all of the all the rules out of it, where what marriage does is it isolates people sexually. It makes it so that you don't have to worry about that guy going after your girl because that guy is married and you're married. And those bonds cannot be broken easily. It allows cooperation. When that breaks, you're breaking part of the bones of civilization. And so to focus on gays in this environment seems to me to be a displacement activity for those who can't handle the idea of going after Casanovas and prostitutes. Do you support free speech? Asks Mephistopheles' ghost. Yes, I do. But I'll make an exception for people who themselves state that they want to kill people who say things they don't like. So if you yourself say, I want to kill people who say things that I don't like, then I have no sympathy for your cries about free speech, right? You have to embrace the value yourself for me to consider that it embraces you. Or at the very least, you have to avoid denigrating it. If you're going to denigrate the value of free speech, then you can't hide behind its banner. To do that is simply parasitic. D.B. Cooper says, religious people started no-fault divorce. Well, basically, yeah. Like when all that stuff was happening, the country was very religious, and the religious authorities have not stepped up against it. Really, fundamentally, they've moved in a very, very feminist direction. So, you need to fix that if you're worried about civilization. Going after the gays seems like a weird displacement activity. You can't handle going after gender relations. It's too tough for you, so you go after gays. D.B. Cooper says, no, they just failed. I don't know. I see the church authorities as being extremely socially liberal.
No, I'm going to answer you. You already asked the question, so I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to ask you that question. This is America. This is the greatest freaking nation in the world. We realize that America is great because we have Western values.
By the way, that counts for a lot for me. To say that America is the greatest country in the world. I think it's important. Whether you think it's true or not, it's important. People need to be patriotic. People need to have need to rep their country. Fundamentally, a country is an association that depends on that kind of thing. So if you have a black person who's willing to say America is the greatest country in the world, and you have a white person who is, has all the characteristics that I like, but talks about how the country is evil and wicked and doomed, well, I'm going to go with a black person, because that's very, very important to anyone who wants to build anything from this clay that is the nation.
Realize that, no, let me finish, dude. We realize that gays and lesbians are able.
Mephistopheles' ghost says, I support free speech until we achieve power. Yeah, that's typical, right? That's exactly typical. And that's exactly why people don't have much sympathy for the cries of free speech coming from people who are, from people who hold that political opinion. The reason why they don't have any sympathy for it is simply that it's transparently shallow, right? If you want free speech until you have power, you don't want free speech.
Able to contribute to American society in the same way that everybody else is. And let me tell you, when you continue doing that, okay, you realize that we are here. We are able to do everything. And let me tell you something as well. I served in the military, right? I served 5 years. I did an Iraq tour. What's up?
How does homosexual sex help us win the...
And again, he talks about homosexual sex. Yeah, not a good look, boy. Yeah. Better to burn your crops and poison your waters than promote division of the family. Agreed. The family is the bedrock of civilization. It's not a coincidence that the civilizations that are worth the name are all strongly monogamous.
Culture war.
Who said homosexual sex helps you win the culture war?
That is the question that I'm asking. Why are you promoting it?
Well, it's a BS question. And
That's the question that I'm asking. But first he was asking about being associated with gay people at all, if I heard correctly. So he says associated with gay people at all, and then why does gay sex help? Seems like those things are very tightly tied in his mind for some reason.
you know it is. It's not. It's a question that is not being. It's not a good faith question.
So I'm
it's
gonna
not.
be,
It's the dude.
I'm
It's
gonna
not.
Oh, so here we have Jim Johnson says something I want to address. Nothing is conserved, and you that speaks so often of the open window should think about it deeper. I think he's saying nothing is conserved. Well, that's the main thing that I get away from that. Okay, so Jim Johnson, how am I conserving nothing if I conserve the family and the nation? How is that nothing? Your group doesn't even do that.
be
Good
honest,
faith question.
Rob, like, honestly, I don't care what two consenting adults do. So that's
Oh, wow, that's overwhelmingly normal of you, Charlie Kirk.
That's the whole thing.
and your hyper focus on it is kind of weird. Thanks for
I
being
mean, you
here.
seem to be really interested in gay sex. I'm pretty sure if you're into that, you can go find somebody to do it with. I don't know, maybe. Next question.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Mr. Kirk.
And wait a minute, let me. This is my first culture war, so I want to say that I have to make a statement. And I'm not here to tell anybody what to think or what to believe, but for me, somebody like that doesn't really have any place in the conservative movement because it's something that is so behind the times. And you can boo and you can do whatever you want to, baby, because I'm going to be me, and I'm still here.
So Mephistopheles Ghost, what do you conserve? What do these people asking the questions conserve?
Next question.
What's the question?
My question is largely directed to Mr. Kirk because you were raised as a conservative. Part of the issue I see here is, what's your name, Rob?
Yeah.
So you're saying, oh, you're behind the times, this isn't conservative. Well, we don't want centrists in the conservative movement. We want to retain our core values.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
We don't want drag
But
queens.
here's the thing. It's not about what you want because here's the thing. The beauty about social media, is that I can be me and I can bring myself to the table. And it's not about what you want, it's about what the people want. And if there are enough people in this movement that say, hey, Rob is cool, he's gay, whatever, it really doesn't matter what you think. You can say whatever you want and you can believe whatever you want to believe. But it's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing.
Get
and it's
to
not going to deplatform me.
So my question is, again, it's directed to Mr. Kirk because he was raised as a conservative. As the guy before has said, you've advocated for homosexuality, said that there's a place for the gay agenda within the conservative movement. My question is, and you're also comfortable with transgenders and cross-dressers, I understand. So my question is there any point where conservatives should take a moral stance on Christian morality, or should we abandon it altogether? So in other words, what is what is your brand of conservatism doing to actually conserve Christian morality? If we're ceding to the left on transgender, gay rights, gay marriage, we don't want that in conservatism.
But where does, the family really come into that? Like, how is this guy protecting the family by going on his crusade against gays? I don't see how that protects the family at all. What would protect the family would be focusing on gender relations. And gays aren't really related to gender relations. They're, by definition, outside of that problem. So I don't know. It seems rather cowardly. Like, if you want to solve marriage, then talk about women. Obsessing about gays is both kind of weird and dumb.
So you don't want him in the conservative movement? I just want to be very clear. Let's just be... Rob.
Space Time BCR says, selling them the idea that they should hate their gay son isn't realistic either. Right. I mean, there's nothing realistic about this position. It doesn't make any sense. Like, first of all, why... why fight a battle that you're going to lose that doesn't even help you if you win it? It's a slippery slope, says Mephistopheles. Well, the bigger slippery slope seems to be in terms of the marriage between men and women, how that's going. That seems like the bigger slippery slope.
So you don't want me in the movement?
No. Hold on a sec. I want to be very clear. Hold on.
DB Cooper asks, why is it the absence of promoting homosexuality is hatred? It's not. But this is not the absence of promoting homosexuality. This is singling out a gay person at an event and saying they should not be part of this movement. And for them to be part of this movement is essentially the same thing as it failing. By definition, if you have gay people here, then you're failing the movement. Like, that definition is not simply the absence of promoting homosexuality. I hope you can understand that, right? I mean, it goes far beyond simply not promoting to saying that if they're involved, then it inherently means that the movement is failed.
Hold on a sec. You're bringing some very charged language. I'm going to try to calm down the temperature in the room so I can try to rationally understand an irrational position.
Why should we
Let me finish.
compromise our fundamental beliefs?
Let me finish.
Elizer says he's complaining about the embracement of homosexuality, not oppression. Well, if every time you have a homosexual speaker on the stage, you say, well, this is too much embracing of homosexuality, what does that imply? Right? I mean, it doesn't take very much intelligence to see what that implies. Mephistopheles says, I'd rather go down swinging than suffer death by 1,000 cuts. Question is which cuts to focus on, right? It seems like these folks are focusing on paper cuts while their guts are falling out of their abdomen.
So, I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible's the greatest book ever to exist in the history of the world. And I believe Rob Smith has decency and dignity as an individual in the United States of America. Hold on a second. We're not a theocracy. We never have been.
And you know what? And wait a minute. Let me hop in here. Hold on, because I'm in it.
Another problem is this issue of theocracy and religious authority. If you're going to base everything on doctrine? Which church? This has always been a multi-denominational country that had separation of church and state. So which doctrine are you going to make supreme? And how do you intend to do that?
He's addressing me. The thing that I don't understand, well, I'm addressing you. How about that?
You don't even have the courage to address the gay man on stage.
So the problem that I have with, as somebody that is a gay Christian, and this is the problem that I have.
D.B. Cooper asks, why has the proportion of self-identified gay and trans skyrocketed in recent years? Have anything to do with promotion to society? I think that's absolutely the case. Particularly in the case of trans, that's going to be deeply related to society and how society regards these issues. And I think that the answer to that is to talk about the value that traditional gender roles bring to the table. Not about how you're going to go to hell if you don't follow these roles, not about how we need to attack everyone who doesn't follow these roles, about how these roles help invigorate and give meaning to people's lives. It's good for you to understand the value of gender roles. You shouldn't do it selflessly, do it selfishly.
Because my relationship...
And incidentally, there's a corollary in terms of broader politics. It's not just about yourself and individuals, but what you want for the country. If you want a country that is prosperous, then have a country that has good relations between men and women, where they have relationships that are durable and that involve children, right? In a word, marriage. Make marriage strong, you make the country strong. None of this requires that you demonize people who don't fit into the role. It requires that you lionize people who do.
Relationship with God and coming back into the church over the past year and a half is one of the greatest gifts that has been given to me in terms of being in this movement. So my question to everybody who tries to say that, oh, you shouldn't be, Christian because you're gay. Why are you trying to turn people away from God? So if you love God and Christianity is so right, because I do love God, so why would you be trying to turn me away? Why would you be trying to turn me away from God?
So we're going to get to
another thing, and one thing that I don't do,
question.
And one thing that I don't do is that there is no man that is of this earth that is.
Here we see Jim Johnson says, New Testament says, do not lay with the same sex. Yeah, I mean, I agree. It seems, it doesn't seem to be compatible with Christianity or with Christian doctrines. But we're not a theocracy, right? We're not a theocracy. We have separation of church and state. It's multi-denominational and multi-religion, so including non-believers. So if you want a theocracy, then you may want to go elsewhere, because this is the least theocratic state, right? This is a state that was founded on the notion of separation of church and state by people who are relatively skeptical, as those things go, of religion. You say, I know that you know that I hate Christianity. I don't hate Christianity. I don't hate religion. I understand that America is not a theocracy and wasn't meant to be a theocracy. We're not a democracy either, is the point. Well, it depends what you mean. If what you mean is that we're not based on popular will, then sure. But I think that we're the best example of a functioning democratic system, meaning a system that involves, that has at its base the vote of citizens. I think that this is the best democracy that has been created, if you're taking that broader category. Now, people often conflate democracy with direct democracy, and in that case, no, we're not a direct democracy, but we are a republic, and a republic that is pretty successful.
Is going to tell me what God has for me and how much God loves me. So, goodbye. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Next question. Thank you.
Holy shit, that was homophobic. Sorry about that, Rob.
Here we have the socialist. And it's interesting that people accuse TPUSA of not being pro free speech enough, but all the people who they bring to the fore are people who disagree with them. So Jim Johnson, here's a question for you. Do you want America to be a democracy, in your words? Do you want America to be more based on popular will? Is that your objection to the way things are going, that the popular will is not enforced well enough? Or do you have deeper objections that relate to a deeper sense of morality and what's right and wrong? Because most people in your camp do not see the objections that way.
Don't ever apologize for ignorance, dude.
Well, I'm not a conservative, so this is probably something you're going to have to get used to.
Before you answer your question, this is the first time we've gotten that kind of flow of whatever the heck that was. So continue.
So my point's going to be centered on capitalism and its relationship to immigration. For the record, am not a conservative.
Jim Johnson says, I don't have a camp. You definitely have a camp, bro. You're definitely in a camp. Like, you're not apolitical. I'm not either. Nothing to be ashamed of. But you're not apolitical.
Conservative. I'm a revolutionary socialist, anarchist communist to be precise, which is
Whoa,
much further left than Hillary Clinton. And if you ever want to debate with a real leftist, I'd be happy to debate anybody in Turning Point. But my point is, Venezuela, we don't consider communist. It's state capitalist.
Jim says the republic has been subverted. Heavens. Well, you think that in the past it was less based on elites? So in the past, in say, 1700s, 1800s, it was less based on there being an elite in control. It's been recent that an elite has arisen to have a lot of power. Before that, America was this, apparently this egalitarian, flat hierarchy, Valve software style organization, but now it's been subverted and there's a few elites in control of everything.
Guys, stop interrupting the questioner.
So my point is, you sit there and you call al-Baghdadi the greatest terrorist or the greatest genocidal maniac in the world, right? While ignoring the United States' historical role in the exploitation and the genocide of the indigenous peoples that lived here and the conditions that we consistently subject African American communities to, which I know what you're going to do. You're going to point it to Democrats. Yeah, the Democrats suck, by the way. I don't like the...
Mephistopheles says it was our own elites. Yeah, but Mephistopheles, the objections that you lay at the feet of Jews can easily be applied to previous elites or previous subpopulations. So, like right away, when America was formed, you had problems with people who were more friendly with England and who advocated, dovish or pro-England positions while America was at war with England, right? Like right away you had a problem of dual loyalties. There's no way that in a country made of immigrants or made of colonizers from different places, you're going to have a situation where there are no dual loyalty problems. So the question is, once that smear is out of the way, what's your objection? An out-group elite is fundamentally different. You think D.B. Cooper, you think that there was no in-group, out-group problem between the North and the South? Between the Yankees and the Southerners? Come on.
The Democrats either. Like if Joe Biden...
Like look at how the South talked about the Yankees. Come on.
Hillary Clinton is about as far left as you go. You need to keep going. Don't go the other way. But my point being is, how can you ignore the contradictions within capitalism and its exploitation of indigenous peoples, and its exploitation of labor, and its exploitation of its ecological dislocations, while at the same time criticizing religious fundamentalists who should be criticized while ignoring the genocidal behavior of the United States, the largest empire to ever exist? And those relationships can be proven through our historical... My name is Jorge, so that can be proven through our relationships with South America, via the way that we've developed South America through NAFTA and CAFTA.
I think I got where you're coming from. So there was a...
Here we see Mephistopheles says the Nazi elite did not have dual loyalties. Oh, they had they had a lot of problems, my dude. They had a lot of problems. I don't know if you've looked into it, but yeah, there were issues. There were issues about loyalty in Nazi Germany. And how, right? It was not some sort of paradise where everyone was on the same page. Not at all.
A lot there. First of all, America's definitely made mistakes in our history. The Vietnam War was a mistake. The Iraq War was a mistake. But
true.
America is not a mistake. The world is a better place because of America.
True.
Allow me to finish. I allowed you to talk uninterrupted.
If you didn't hear, the questioner says, for who? Not indigenous people.
South Korea exists because of America. America went into the Korean War for one reason only, to make sure that the Korean communists did not control the entire Korean peninsula. Tens of thousands of Americans died, so now that tens of millions South Koreans can live free. If we did not get involved in the Korean War, which people would say was empire building, but guess what? We gave the entire country back to the South Koreans, and they are a free, Western-centered, neoliberal democracy that is an amazing, beautiful country thanks to American interventionism. Now, mind you, America has made plenty of mistakes. I am not an apologist for every decision that America has made in the history of our country. However, America is a country that has made the world a better place. The world is more generous, more fair, more benevolent, more creative because of the American experiment.
Agreed. And even America's mistakes are often cast in an absolutely misleading light, as if America is this evil force in the world that attacks these poor, innocent countries. America gets involved with very seriously controversial countries. America is not, you know, it wasn't like North Vietnam was beloved by the world. Not like Saddam Hussein's Iraq was beloved by the world. There were problems. These countries created problems for their neighbors, right? It's not like America just comes in and creates de novo all of these issues. America puts its foot where it doesn't belong a lot of the time, but that doesn't mean that America is to blame for the way that these things go. Certainly not uniquely.
And because of our country. When people are in trouble, America steps up. When there's a humanitarian crisis, America steps up. Most valuable countries, the largest cultural influence, and here's the final way that we can prove that America is indeed the greatest country ever to exist. There's two ways. Number one, we're the only country in the world where even those people who say they hate it refuse to leave. I'm waiting for all these celebrities to leave America, and I haven't seen it. Because there is no better country to be in than America. And number two, there is a waiting list, 45 million people long, to get into this country legally. We let in 1 million people legally into this country every single year. There's only 2 million legal immigrants into America every single year. We let in 1 million of those immigrants. In fact, I think that's too many. I think we need to actually have the RAISE Act by Senator Tom Cotton and moderately lower that over time. So this insinuation that America is an evil country and that it's within our fabric, which you're nodding your head and you agree with, is insulting to our history. It's an incorrect analysis of the good that we have done with the world. And honestly, it is not looking at what's actually happening to the amount of people that want to come into this country to make their lives better. Rob, would you care?
And let me hop on to the fact, America isn't good for blacks, so what? What other countries in the world have as many black millionaires as America? Has as many black entrepreneurs as America? Has many black athletes as America? Has many black entertainers as America? Has as many black billionaires as America? Has as many black people that are in the middle class as America? Has as many homeowners as America? Has as many
True. Yeah, there's a lot to be grateful for. Now, let's see. Issue I have is that I need to get Discord working without push to talk. So yeah, that should be about right. So if you can hear me on Discord, then just mic up and let me know, because I'm using a different mic for Discord than for my my stream. So if you're on the Discord, you can hear me twice. I'm gonna post a link to my Discord again, inviting people. Boom, boom, boom. Here we go. Yeah. In the comments, someone says, thank God that South Korea exists. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think South Korea is something to be incredibly proud of. The success of that country can be laid at the feet largely of American intervention, and that's worth talking about. I don't think that's worth ignoring. I think it's quite important. And it's a good counterpoint to the kind of doomsaying about American intervention. D.B. Cooper says, have you considered joining the army? I'm not particularly interested in serving in the armed forces. I would serve if I was called up, but otherwise I would not. This is a volunteer force, DB, so those who wish to volunteer. There is no obligation to serve. And the notion that people who volunteer are somehow victims if a war is started is absolutely absurd. That's what they sign up for. That's what they're paid for, by the way, and paid fairly generously.
Business owners,
particularly when you count the benefits.
As America has as many black business owners that are creating jobs as America. You can't answer that question because there are none.
Hey, Cern, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Discord is a bit quiet. Output volume. Yeah. Try again.
How's this?
Better. And I'm going to... Oh, I see. And I'll also change your output volume as well, because I think I can do that. Yep. There we go. Now you should be great. Should be just great. All right. So have you been watching the stream? Have you heard anything about... anything you wanted to comment on?
No, I just started watching.
Cool. Have you followed the brouhaha at all with TPUSA and Nick Fuentes' posse?
I saw some headlines about it, but I haven't read up on it yet.
Right. So yeah, if you're following along in stream, you can probably hear the video.
All right.
Thank you so much. We got a
Thanks.
line very long. Thanks for being here tonight.
All right, so according to the U.S. Census Bureau population projections, in 2045, whites will account for less than 50% of the population in the United States. Given that the Democratic Party's policies do not point towards the maintaining of our American ideals, and given the most groups other than whites overwhelmingly vote Democrat, how can we be sure that said American ideals will be maintained when millions of immigrants come in with majority Democratic support? Can you prove that our white European ideals can be maintained if the country's majority is no longer made up of white European descendants? If
All right.
not, should we
I'm
support
not
mass
applauding,
legal
but let me
immigration?
So did you hear that that objection, CERN? No, I'll just keep playing the video.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems like, yeah, like these the Fuentes posse seems like it's pretty self-destructive. Like it doesn't seem like if you have a movement that depends on minority support to succeed, you don't kick dust into the minorities' faces, even regardless of morality from a strategic perspective. But I will talk about morality. If someone is supporting you, regardless of their color or creed, if they're standing steadfastly behind your cause, you have a certain duty to recognize that, in my view. All right. Let's see if we can get this. Oh, and if anyone else on the Discord can hear me, just let me know, and you can comment whenever you want.
Yeah, I just say it's a little hard to follow simply because there is kind of a double like an echo because of streaming the YouTube and the Discord at the same time.
Right. One thing that you could do is I'm copying the YouTube video link and the timestamp, and so instead of listening to the stream, you can just listen to the YouTube video yourself. Timestamp is 1920, and so just unpause roughly when I unpause or when you hear me pause in the Discord, and just listen to me on the Discord instead of on the stream, because then there's not a delay. Does that work?
Yeah, that's
All right, I'm gonna keep playing.
Okay, okay, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Let me answer, I guess, your question with my perspective. I've been asked this a couple times in the last week and a half. Let me tell you my stance on immigration, and I'm going to tell you where I think you go terribly.
And DB Cooper says, I would support anyone of any color demanding an end to immigration. I agree. And so that you have this fellow over here talking about how, or he's sharing a stage. He's bigging up Charlie Kirk, who is, as we've covered, he has your political position, or at least as far as that's going to go in America. It seems to me that when you have a black man who supports your political position, regardless of his race, you should respect that. And it's like, well, he's not far enough. He doesn't go far enough in being anti-immigration. Well, I don't know. Like, your expectations of American politics have to be tied to what American politics is. And if they're not, you have to recognize that you're different, right? Then that you're not really part of the American mainstream. Jim Johnson says, war for profit is good, and the poor wanted some money, so they deserve it. If they die under the presumption of a righteous cause. I don't think that's a good description of American foreign policy, my dude. I don't think that war for profit describes American foreign policy. And if it did, it would actually probably be probably be a better humanitarian situation. Anyway, CERN, any thoughts so far?
Sorry, I just wanted to second your statement that if war were actually fought for profit, it would probably be a better humanitarian situation.
Yeah, agreed. Unpausing.
Terribly wrong with your question, okay? I think that we should embrace Senator Tom Cotton's RAISE Act, which is to lower the amount of legal immigrants into our country, but increase the merit base that we let people to come into our country. End the visa lottery, end chain migration, make English the official language of the United States, build the southern border, and restrict the amount of...
Look at all the things he's saying, right? Like, you say he's here to sublimate populist energy. Well, what about the people who are chanting Nazi slogans? How can you say that they're not doing exactly what you accuse them of, sublimating populist energy? When you tie populism to Nazism, you're doing the worst thing possible for that political movement, the worst thing you could possibly ever do. Whereas TPUSA, that you're so complaining about, is trying to be legit. The Fuentes crowd, I claim DB Cooper, is doing that.
Flow of border jumping and line cutting to come into our country. But I'm always perplexed by this argument that I'm always interested by this argument, like, oh, how are we going to maintain our white status? So let's play out that racist idea, and all of a sudden we let a bunch of French people in our country. No, let's play that idea. We let a bunch of German or French people who are all socialist and hate our values. The insinuation of your question is that somehow race and ideology are intertwined together. President Donald Trump has been wrongly accused of being a racist president. Do you know that President Donald Trump received more support in the Latino and the black community than John McCain and Mitt Romney?
Combined.
I will also say that it is a failure of the conservative movement to not be able to communicate to communities in the black community, which I believe the black community is an inherently conservative community, a community that is around the ideas of the Judeo-Christian tradition. It is a pro-life community. It's a hard-working community. And so to reject your premise that, oh, how are we going to keep the white status of this, I find that to be a racist question. I reject the idea behind it. I do not think America should become a white ethno-state as a country. In fact, I think that is a fringe perspective. I appreciate you being here, and I'm going to rationally...
Josh says, try listening to Discord but can't hear videos. Yeah, I'm not sure how to pipe the video into Discord, so I just posted the video in chat, and people in Discord could follow along. But mainly Discord is just for if you're going to talk. If you're not going to talk, then Discord isn't very useful. It's because if you're not going to talk, then the stream works just fine. And you even get video. But yeah, if I can figure it out, I'll try to double stream the audio from this stream to Discord. D.B. Cooper asks, who is chanting these Nazi slogans? And again, I'll answer. Like, this is what I claim the Fuentes crowd is doing, because it's and in large part because it's largely the same crowd and the same energy and the same memes that you saw behind the Hail Victory brigade all those years ago. Ancient history for some, but not for me.
Push back against it every single time I come in contact with it. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it.
And can I just say, I'm always like cutting in. So there's this idea that with America and our history is America is an imperfect place that keeps on getting better, I think. But there's this idea that all of our values are inherently white, or there's this idea that the conservative movement right now, and the conservative movement that I'm a part of, is black, it's Latino, it's white. It's so many people that have the same inherent ideas, and we come together.
Now, one thing that I will say is that, you don't have to ignore correlations. It's important to understand correlations. That just doesn't ever mean that you step on your own face by attacking people because of their skin color. Like, you don't have to do that. That's insane. You just have to understand correlations. You have to understand what that means and what that means predictively for a lot of questions, including immigration. Right? But this is only an issue when you have someone who's attacking the notion of immigration control and borders. That's the only time that it comes up. If you have someone like Charlie Kirk who is saying that you need strong borders, then there's nothing to attack. Josh Randall asks, how does Luke stream? He uses Zoom. He has a Zoom call. I'm using Discord instead of Zoom because it's more convenient. Discord will last after the stream, and so we can talk about things after the stream ends. And Jim Johnson says, you will literally say the opposite of the truth to toe the neoliberal line. I can be called many things, but neoliberal, I'm not sure about that. Hey, Fletcher, good to see you. So, sir, any thoughts so far?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's just kicking yourself in the foot to try to throw out potential ideological allies based on race. And the reality is, even whites are not very conservative, and so trying to expect ideology to correlate closely with race. I mean, it's just in denial of reality. I think there is a reality that a lot of minorities tend to skew highly towards the Democratic Party, but I don't believe that that actually has as much to do with ideology as it does to do with appearances, I guess, of which parties cater to which races.
Right. Like, it's you can understand correlations without deciding that you want to attack people who are the wrong skin color for being on your side. And yeah, like, it's it's way more complicated than just like, you can't just say that because there's a higher likelihood of it, that you can ignore that whites are completely divided on this issue, right? Like, the notion that it's like Republicans are the white party and then everything else is the non-white party. I mean, where would the Democrats be without white votes? Like, where, like, can you imagine a world where Democrats don't have any white votes? Like, they're just not a party anymore. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. Fletcher is here. Awesome. Fletcher, join the Discord. Join the stream, if you like. Unpausing.
Is Jim asking about me?
Oh, Jim asked, is this guy a first-generation immigrant also? CERN was born here, I think, whereas I was not. Right?
Yeah, I was a citizen by birth.
Right. And I was not. I came here when I was very young, and I had to naturalize.
These differences because we all believe in the power and beauty of America.
In the chat, Jim Johnson says there really is no separation between your ideals and the Democrats. But that's insane. That's literally insane. Like, someone who's for the wall has a big separation with the Democrats. Someone who's for marriage is and for socially enforced monogamy has a big separation with the extremely socially liberal Democrats. Josh Randall asked, Kyle was born in the land of the chosen? No, I was born in Europe. So that's my other citizenship. I don't have a Israeli citizenship. Fletcher says, all the leading Democrat candidates are white people. True. Unpausing.
We all believe that patriotism and nationalism is a good thing. These are not things that are specific to a skin
color. One of them is
or an
reportedly
ethnicity
Cherokee.
or a
Yeah, we have one Cherokee candidate, one Amerindian candidate, very, very pure-blooded Amerindian, from the Warren tribe.
nationality or religion or a background or anything else. And that is the world that I'm trying to push forward. That is the world that I believe that we live in. That is the movement that we are living in right now. So the idea that if America somehow becomes less white, then we're going to lose our values is an inherently racist idea. And not only is it racist against the blacks, whites.
And here's where it's like, by correlation, if you were to especially if you were to suddenly change the demographics, then you would have a shift in political values, just given the correlations that are involved. So here, I think that the guest, what's his name? The guest here is overstating his case. You can talk about how changes in demographics are going to change politics, but that does not equate to attacking people who are on your side, or even people in general, for their race. And so, yeah, like that's the equivalent that is drawn. Unpausing again.
Whatever, it's racist against people who are white that reject that nonsense as well, period.
Next question.
Yeah, what a racist question that was. So I got a quick and fun, lighthearted question for you, Charlie. So I know you gave a speech in Jerusalem earlier this year.
Yes, I did.
Were there any awesome, fun dance parties that you guys had afterwards? Because I heard that Israelis are some of the best dancers in the world. If you guys don't believe me, just Google dancing Israelis. It's insane how good their dance moves are. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Israel's a beautiful country, a great country, too.
It is. They're our greatest ally.
Correct. Thanks for being here tonight. Next question.
Would have been nice if he could address the implication directly. Oh yeah, the dancing Israelis. Like, if you look at the actual pictures, there's not pictures of them dancing. There's pictures of them being on a roof looking at the Twin Towers, which turns into dancing Israelis, which turns into the Mossad did 9/11, right? I mean, it's just so, it's so scummy how these things get left unsaid but implied. And this dance that they do is like, are you against me? You're against freedom of speech. But by the way, I want to accuse your people of having a fake 9/11. Like, it's just insane, right? I mean, if you're going to be hostile to that degree, why expect even a little bit of recognition from the people who you're accusing?
Thank you for being here tonight. Next question. Yeah, let's give it up for Rob Smith for being a veteran, right?
Thank you. That's why I don't get bothered by the trolls. Like, what? I got bullets whizzing by my face in a rock, and you think, like, a troll is going to shake me? I'm serious.
Yeah, I'm a little sick, so I'm sorry about my voice. But I have two quick questions, very quick. Do you believe in free speech? Absolutely.
Well, look, I believe every individual has freedom of speech, but also part of freedom of speech is you have the freedom to associate with who you want to associate with. You can say, I want to listen to certain things, I don't want to listen to certain things, as an individual. And I believe the solution to hate speech is more speech. As we're demonstrating tonight, we literally say if you disagree, you're allowed to go to the front of the line. I think we're practicing what we preach. Well, if you disagree, then go to the front of the line. You all disagree. Well, then, fight over it. Next one.
All right.
So that next question. Thank you. You got one question.
Yes,
Thank you. Thanks. One question.
Oh, neat. All right. So I've followed you for a while. I've listened to a lot.
And this is funny, right? Like, I don't know if you caught that, but he says, if you disagree, go to the front of the line. And that seems to be the policy at these talks. They let the people who disagree go to the front of the line. And then it's like, well, come to the front of the line if you disagree. But we all disagree. We all disagree with you. Okay, well then fight among yourselves. Like, this is not.
Yeah.
This is not.
What
the attitude.
assholes?
Go ahead. Yeah. Like.
How dare they make everyone who disagrees with them stand in line and have to stand in line to get to disagree and be stuck waiting for other disagreeers to have their say.
They're so anti-free speech, man. They just want to attack free speech. That's what I get out of these people. Like, yeah, and this is contrasted, by the way, with people who talk about killing journalists who they disagree with, right? Like it's absolutely staggeringly dishonest for this crowd to be talking about how freedom of speech is being trampled. Like, you have to choose. If you're going to be like the badass day of the rope, we're going to come get you, people. You can't whine about how people are not recognizing your precious freedoms.
A lot of your talks. And my question is this. Given that your interpretation of traditional conservative values stems from 1965 on immigration and 2015 on race, I'd like to know, how long do we have to wait until child drag shows are pushed as American traditional conservatism?
Let me answer.
How long do we have until armbands are traditional American conservatism? I mean, it's not like the way that this question is posed is as if the people who are posing it are this immovable rock that are just the essence of America. We're the essence of America. How could you deviate from the essence of America? By the way, our avatar is a Hispanic person, but we're the essence of America. A Hispanic person who yells at someone for attacking a mass murderer of Hispanics. We're America. We're the core America. Everyone else is fake America, right? I mean, that's ridiculous.
I'm gonna answer that question. So, I get a lot of crap, and I've been getting a lot of crap from people in this room about being a gay conservative. And let me be very clear right now. No, you're not. But okay, that's great. But let me
He
address
served in
that.
the
But
United
let me
States
address
military.
that.
That's
Let
what
me
he
address
conserved,
that.
my friend.
How about
he
I
served in the
conserve-
military
how about I
while you're a
conserve this
coward and you go to the
country?
front of the line.
How about I
he went to
conserve this
Iraq to
country,
protect
dude?
our freedoms
How about
while
I
you
conserve
go up
this
talking
country,
about
dude?
conserving our country.
Your freedoms when I was fighting in Iraq for you. How about that? Is that a good enough answer?
Fletcher says they think that the essence of most of the country is reviled by them. Yep. They revile most of the country, and most of the country reviles them. And they say, we're America. We're the core of America. You know, references to European political parties and and led by, Johnny-come-latelys, but we're America.
Answer about what I conserve. So let me be clear, because I want to address what he's saying, because I think that there's a valid point in what he's saying, even though what he's saying is crap. So there's this idea that there's a lot of crap going on in the far, I call it the LGBT alphabet soup left, that myself as a gay conservative is like pushing back on. The child drag queen stuff is garbage, okay? The drag kid stuff is garbage. Trans kids is garbage, okay? And so I get crap from the right for being a quote-unquote fake conservative, and I get crap from the left when I stand up against that stuff and say that we need to calm that stuff down because it is not doing anything for America. As a matter of fact, I think that child drag queens and I think that trans kids, quote-unquote, are destructive to the fabric of this country. I absolutely believe that. So not to address a troll, but I need to say, as a gay conservative, myself and the Ricky Rebels of the world and the Scott Pressers of the world, we're the only ones in that community that are standing up against that crap and calling it for what it is. So if you don't...
Oh, how awful. How could he say these terrible things? He's undermining conservatism. Even to have him on the stage is a vicious knife in the heart of conservatism. By the way, no problem with the Nazi references. That doesn't hurt conservatism at all. But this guy's he's the death of conservatism.
don't think
Yeah,
that
I
you
mean,
need us in the movement.
I do agree that generally that there seems to be a phenomenon in, especially on social issues, where conservatives are constantly accepting things that they would not have accepted a few decades ago.
For sure.
Yeah, for example, homosexuality in this case.
Yeah, that's definitely happening. But you're seeing, among the people in the country, like most people in the country are not going to take the stance that this, his name is falling out of my head. What was his name? Rob Smith. Yeah, this Rob Smith would take. Like, he's taking a stronger stance. Like, the number of people who would be willing to stand up on the stage and say, well, this is bullshit, and I'm going to say that in front of a huge audience. That's not a very large number of people. But there you go. Right? Fletcher says, I wouldn't even care about Fuentes' anti-Semitism if he didn't explicitly say he wants to invade prominent conservatives' events and bombard them with retarded questions like this. Yeah, I mean, he wants to basically, put his folks and himself into every one of these conversations. That's his goal, and it's a goal that boosts his viewership and boosts his numbers. But fundamentally, like, it's you can't do that and then say, oh, how are they disavowing me? Go ahead.
Yeah, he and his folks are trying to do to the right what the social justice warriors are doing to the left.
Yep.
These people on the left, the alphabet soup is going to do a lot of crazy stuff, and we need to pull them back in line, period. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Thanks so much. Next question. Thanks for being here.
Hey, my question is for Charlie. Okay. So, in the wake of the student debt crisis, stagnant wage growth across all education levels in all fields, liberal arts, STEM, how is regurgitating this far-left talking point of stapling green cards to diplomas America first? How is this any different than chain migration funded by taxpayers?
He calls stapling green cards to diplomas far-left talking points, but that was Mitt Romney's talking point. If Mitt Romney is far left, you're not in American politics. You're in some other politics, but I don't know which. Dude, I don't know which. some imaginary like blend of European fascism and America firsters, right? Like this is not reality that you're in when you think that this is a far left talking point. The far left talking point is open borders and the embrace of specifically you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The staple a diploma to every doctorate degree is not a far left talking point, and particularly not a far left talking point if they're getting the degree from an American university. And to be clear, Mitt Romney said, I think, anytime you get a PhD, staple a green card to it. And then Charlie Kirk says, if they get a degree at one of our universities, one of America's universities, then you get then they can stay here. He's not saying that every college graduate around the world should come to America with a green card.
Through the NSF, DOE, DOD. Those
Okay,
funds go
so,
to...
Yeah, I'm happy to elaborate on it. So I said at a speech last week that if someone graduates from a four-year college, they should have a green card stapled to their diploma. Let me elaborate on that further. I don't think it makes sense as America First to invest our tax dollars in foreign nationals that come to our own publicly funded universities and then say go back and compete against us in Korea, Japan, or Southeast Asia. Well, so you just said they're competing against us here. Well, actually, if they're employed by American companies or they're entrepreneurs, there's evidence to show that they actually embrace our American cultural identity and they come and they immerse into our country. So I'll give you a great example. So I'll give you a great example. This same sort of skepticism, the same sort of hostility was given towards Asians in the 1940s and 50s. Asians have been one of the most productive, one of the most amazing communities, least likely to commit crimes, most contributing communities to our country, including
Also the
Indian
wealthiest.
Americans, people from Southeast Asia. And so I will say this. Look, I'll nuance it even further. And a green card is not citizenship. I did not say citizenship. There's a huge difference there. But if you graduate from Stanford, MIT, Yale, and you're able to find a job that needs to be filled by an American employer, then yes, I do believe you should be given temporary residency to be able to fill that job. And guess what? You pay taxes. You're within the system. I'll say this. I believe in lowering the amount of legal immigrants. I believe in eliminating chain migration. I believe in ending the visa lottery, making English the official...
Lower legal immigrants and chain migration and the visa lottery. At this point, he's like solidly on the right edge of American immigration policy, and he's being called a far leftist. Right? This is a mirror of what you see with lefties who accuse anyone who deviates slightly as being a fascist. They have fascist tendencies.
Exactly.
The language of the United States, building the wall, enforcing our laws, and also allowing ICE to go into our inner cities to go after lawbreakers, as well as ending sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are one of the worst things that we allow to happen in our country, where lawlessness happens every single day. Thank you for your question. I appreciate you being here.
Hi, Charlie. So I saw and enjoyed your debate at Politicon with Kyle Klinsky over the weekend. And you said during the debate that the free speech police are telling people that they can no longer say certain things. Yet, as you were saying that, you had actual police prevent someone from merely watching the debate. Nick Fuentes. And there was no evidence that he was going to be disruptive or break the rules. But now Nick has...
Nick be disruptive? Imagine.
Some pretty important views that I strongly disagree with. But you say socialism is the most evil and
I have to
deadly
interrupt.
ideology.
Somebody told me that the police did something. That wasn't my event this weekend. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. I'm getting all these messages that said I kicked somebody out. What do you mean?
Well, he was so there were multiple times when he went up to, he was in a line to take a picture with you, and then he was barred from taking a picture with you, and then he was barred specifically from your event. He was told that he
Is
could
this
just
the internet troll? I'm confused who you're talking about.
Who are these people?
Who are you? I want to be sure that is this the internet troll that is the guy that believes in white ethno-nationalism or? Yes. Oh, okay. I'm just.
Yeah, this is an interesting wrinkle to the story where Charlie Kirk is alleging that he had nothing to do with Nick Fuentes' exclusion. He's saying that it was the event that the parent event that said Nick Fuentes couldn't be part of it. I'm not sure exactly how that worked because Nick Fuentes was barred from being specifically at that event. But maybe it was just that any event he tried to join, any kind of speech he tried to join in that arena would kick him out. But I don't know. It was an odd situation.
I just want to make sure because
Yeah,
there
it's
was a guy
always
that
hard to
infiltrated
say.
our booth at Politicon that security came up to us and they said, we're not allowing this guy at the event. Maybe that's what you're talking about. Because there's a guy that infiltrated our booth, and then the Politicon security, an event that I don't run, they came up to me and they said, this guy made a little disruption. But I want to clear this up because I'm getting messages about something I'm not totally clear on.
So yeah, yeah. If you
No, he's got a lot of fangirls
yeah,
in here
you-
tonight, huh?
I mean, you debate socialists and you say socialism is the most deadly ideology. Why not? If you're saying that socialism is the most dangerous, why not debate someone like Nick and get his bad ideas out of the
Well,
the
I think
culture
I've been debating a lot of his bad ideas here tonight quite well. So thank you very much for being here tonight. I appreciate it.
Testing. Yeah.
Hello. So my name is Patrick Casey. I'm an American national.
So Discord should be doing better now. Probably a higher voice quality. Can you confirm? If not, that's fine. I'll keep playing. Patrick Casey here, prominent Twitter user.
Nationalist and America First patriot. And thanks, guys. So, and despite all of that, despite my ardent support for the president and his policies, I was actually kicked out of CPAC earlier this year.
But I didn't kick you out of this event.
No, and I'm not going to blame. I'm not going to blame you.
Just
I'm not
making
gonna blame
sure.
Wasn't Patrick Casey the IE guy? Patrick Casey. Who is this fella? Identity Europa. Okay. So Patrick Casey was the leader of Identity Europa, and yeah, like, and he retired the group and founded a new one called the American Identity Movement. Right. So this poor fellow, so oppressed, so unduly attacked by his by the evil conservatives.
Yeah, you're very defensive here, I get that. As was my good friend Nicolas J. Fuentes, whom I believe you were just discussing up there.
Oh yeah, and Identity Europa explicitly banned Jews. Thanks for mentioning that, Fletcher. It explicitly banned Jews from its organization and its event. And now he's like, oh, well, I'm being censored. Poor me, I'm being censored. Like, it's such a snake in the grass group of people. Like, they're just so dishonest and slimy. It's disgusting.
But look, I'm not going to blame you for that.
I just want to make sure.
I've got a question here.
Is that the troll that keeps tweeting about me?
He's not a troll. He's a very intelligent guy who has a lot to say. He's somewhat of a troll, but
He seems to be getting a lot of you guys to say stuff for him tonight, so.
I don't debate trolls.
I think we've been debating them all night.
Right, so I'm just citing CPAC's decision to remove American nationalists from their conference. I'm not blaming you for that. I'm moving it into something.
I don't run
I'm
CPAC
saying,
either.
Right, and I just said that I'm not blaming you. I've said that 3 times. So,
American nationalist. It's such a slippery term. I'm an American nationalist. By the way, I mean white nationalist, but I'm going to say American nationalist because white nationalist has a stink to it. So I'm going to slough off that snake skin, and I'm going to have a new label. Right? Come on, man. Just say white nationalist if you mean that. and it's such poison. Like, could you imagine a better way to poison the American right than to label white nationalism American nationalism? Right? Like, could you imagine a better op try to destroy the American right than that? I find it hard.
but you do run TPUSA, and TPUSA did remove its relationship with Ashley St. Clair, who all she really did was take a picture with Nick Fuentes. She was in the same room. So my question to you, Charlie, is as someone who, purports to be pro-debate, free speech, and, the exchange of ideas.
Apparently Discord got wrecked. So let me see. I'm going to switch mics on Discord once again. Okay. Yeah, so we'll go for this one. Yep. I guess we're back to the normal mic. Let me know if this works, sir. If you can. or Astro Hopper, let me know like how the mic is working, because it should be worse now. It should be worse now than it was just a minute ago.
I can hear you on YouTube, but not on Discord.
Yeah, so what should have happened is that my sound should have gotten better on Discord.
Okay, I can hear you on Discord.
Okay, yeah, so it probably was on your end that I was completely cutting off. And Astro Hopper, did you hear me? Okay, so it sounded like the same quality all the time. Okay. Hey, JR, Josh, how's it going? If you want to hop on, you can talk. If not, no problem. Here we go. Yeah, Fletcher, I agree. These people are kind of insufferable. Jim Johnson says, you get that it's the tit for tat, Fletcher. Now this TPUSA will be shut out, same as censored by these actions. I mean, what you're doing, though, is you're turning your guns on people who oppose the left, right? So if you say that you're like, oh, you're the purist of the American right, then, you know, if you turn your guns on on people who are, you know, on the right edge of the right in America, it's going to seem like you're kind of crazy or dishonest. And I'm leaning towards dishonest.
Ideas. Do you support blackballing people based on having controversial opinions, or being even in the same room when a photograph is taken with someone who has controversial opinions? And the second part of that question is, if the answer is no, will you debate me on immigration?
So, here we go. Someone asks, I saw a clip today of Brett Weinstein asking Douglas Murray if he cared about the European population. Could you link that clip? But in general, you'll find that answer, right? From people, even people who oppose immigration, what they say is that these are separate issues. The issue of the Enlightenment and the issue of race are completely separate. That's kind of your standard, your standard response. And what he's essentially saying is that it's not whiteness inherently that I care about. It's the thing that's correlated with it, which is basically what everyone says, unless you're like the question is the separability of it, right? In practice. And what people say is that, yeah, you know, in theory, what matters is just the ideology, the performance, but in practice, there's a link between that and race. And that's not something anyone wants, not something anyone created, just something that exists and must be accounted for when you're setting policy. You can't close your eyes to the realities of correlations of math. You just have to stick by the principle. And when people try to get you to throw away the principle because you can't, yeah. Oh, Chris Alton says, it sounded exactly like you, Kyle. In that case, I avow. If it sounded exactly like me, I just avow.
Immigration, identity, and demographics.
Well, so, first of all, I mean this respectfully. I have no idea who you are. The other thing, that was a private matter. Ashley's a good person. We handled it privately. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Interesting there, he says Ashley St. Clair was a good person. It was handled personally. I wonder what that means. She apparently had some medical issues at the same time as the disavowal happened. Maybe that was taken care of. But it's interesting drama behind the scenes. Did you hear about that, CERN? The Ashley St. Clair episode?
I did not.
So she was a TPUSA employee, and she took a picture with Nick Fuentes at some nighttime bar or something. Like it was a group meetup, and Nick Fuentes was there, and she got fired as a result of that. Because the TPUSA people, as you can tell, are not very happy with Nick Fuentes.
Right.
But now he's saying, you know, she's a good person and it all worked out. So who knows? Who knows how that worked out? Apparently she had some medical issues, like I said. So.
Right.
Finally, I just want to make a broader statement. I want to make a broader statement. My stance on Israel, I'm not going to back away on it. My stance on immigration is a mainstream position. And I think it's really incredible because the amount of people that have been here tonight that have shown hatred towards Rob, that have been shown hatred towards his ideas is pretty incredible. And so I really don't know who you are, and the fact you're getting as upset as you are.
Hey, you guys, who likes Cardi B? Cardi B? You know she has that song.
Shout out to the Groyper.
People do anything for clout.
Kind of. All right. So, Jim Johnson says, "I hate you, Fletcher, whatever you are." Right. Yeah. I'm sure Fletcher is quaking in his boots. We're all quaking in our boots. Perennial Koenig says, "That's so unfair." What's unfair specifically? The way that Charlie Kirk was talking about hatred? Because I can see why someone would think that that's unfair without broader context. Charlie Kirk is saying, I've seen so much hatred towards my co-host here. And if you're just taking everything at face value, then that doesn't necessarily make sense. But if you're looking at the broader context, then it does. Because these are dog whistles, right? It's already pretty spicy if you look at it from a surface level, but what it is meant to imply is considerably greater than that.
That Cardi B song, people do anything for clout. People will do anything for clout.
Oh, and this is where it happened.
Anything for the clout, boy.
All right,
Anything
this
for the
is our
clout,
last
baby.
question.
Hi. So I guess.
Control your gay.
Yeah, he said, "Control your gay." Right. Very pleasant interaction.
Control his gay. That's really funny. That's hysterical. That's hysterical. That's hysterical.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's really hysterical.
I know.
I'm nobody's gay.
Thank you.
By the way.
Thank you.
Oh, Perennial Koenig is talking about how it's unfair to get fired for taking a picture with someone. I generally agree. Like, it doesn't sit well with me to fire someone just for taking a picture with somebody. But I also understand why they're on a hair trigger. They're really worried about being swept up with this, with this Nick Fuentes guy.
Yeah, if you don't know, you'll find out. You'll find out.
Last question.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a criminal justice major at Akron. Hello. How do we encourage? How do we encourage more people to be?
Fletcher has wrecked Jim Johnson. Careful what you say about Fletcher, boys. He's got a trigger finger.
Become police officers when even your textbooks and professors are full of liberal bias and hate for the peacemakers of the world? Or what's a way to help win the culture against police?
Look, I mean, the hatred towards our police officers is unbelievable. We should give it up for our police officers, by the way. They're absolutely amazing. They do a great job.
Big ups.
Thank you, guys. Really terrific. And there's so many. The war on police is on.
Oh, damn. Chris Alton, can I see the link that you posted? Chris Alton's... No, I just see a timestamp. Yeah, here, I'll mod you to post links. So, yeah, just post the link. And so then you'll be allowed to post full links with more than the timestamp.
Ongoing. It's misrepresented by studies that are ridiculous and garbage. And so I think that, look, we need more people to become police officers. And Rob, you can comment on this.
Yeah.
In the black community, the war on police is making these communities more dangerous, not safer.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, when it comes to the war on police in the black community,
Sir, do you have any thoughts on policing, sort of broadly? Do you agree with the Democrat criticism of it?
I actually generally do. I do think, and I don't think it's a purely Democrat criticism. I think if you read The American Conservative, you'll find a lot of the same criticisms about the militarization of the police. Really, I do think that from a perspective of
hey folks, welcome to another episode of
police,
the Dark Horse.
I think it's actually unfortunate that the public has this perception of the police as being overly heavy-handed or just control freaks, because that affects the kind of people who would choose that profession, and it's going to kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy if this stereotype persists. But I'm not sure what the solution there would be.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I think that I'm in favor of chest cameras. You know, those recordings happening and being independently auditable. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think that there should be a greater abundance of non-lethal options. I think part of the problem, frankly, is how cops are sort of like one thing that happened was that cops were disallowed from choking people out, right? And then also tasers are hard to justify applying. So at that point, you basically are left with beating them with sticks or with your hands and like sitting on them in order to restrain them. And so, yeah, like I think that there needs to be more pragmatism in terms of the restrictions on police. There needs to be, when you have people going after police for things that are genuinely legit uses of force, it becomes very hard. It becomes very hard to manage, right? Like the police become very defensive, and I've noticed that in online communities of police, they're extremely defensive about even fairly unjustifiable shoots and activities by police because they're so used to being attacked for things that make sense. So yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've definitely seen instances of people going after police for justifiable uh, use of lethal force. I think there was sorry, the name is eluding me right now. There was the guy who had robbed a convenience store and then attacked a cop in his car when he got shot, and people were making a big fuss about that. I think as well the accidental shooting of Oscar Grande at the BART station, which actually resulted in the conviction for the police officer. I actually believe that was one instance where had I been on the jury, I would not have voted to convict that but I guess not police officer, but BART security officer.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, like there's a lot of nuance to be had, and yeah, I do wish it would be nice if the criticism was always reasonable, and the fact that it's so often unreasonable and the attacks are so often unjustified, it just makes it very hard to improve the situation. But overall, I have to say that the East Coast police seem pretty good to me. I think that I just get the impression that the West Coast police are not as good at keeping order as the East Coast police. And you've been on both coasts, right?
Yeah, I have. I mean, it's a mess here. That I don't think. I mean, I don't think there's that much of an issue with police brutality. Honestly, on the West Coast, I think we have the opposite issue of police not really keeping order, and that's often understandable because they for many crimes, if they arrest someone, the guy just gets released, and it's kind of pointless, and so they're really rather hamstrung here. So I do not believe police brutality is as much of an issue, uh, specifically in the big cities, at least in the Bay Area. And
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I wonder about that. I wonder about like how the West Coast is going to respond. So much of this, a lot of the hysteria does seem to be coming from the West Coast as a result of the inadequate policing. Driss Doho says, I've noticed a sharp increase in whining about Jews on what used to be normal conservative channels, now infested with idiots. I think that, one thing that people don't recognize is that there's just a lurking cadre of like 100K-ish people who are fairly dedicated to the alt-right or what could be broadly termed the alt-right. And so that's enough if they step into a community to be almost overwhelming there. It's like kind of like the Westboro Baptist Church, but on steroids. Where they are, they're going to be the talk of the town, and they're going to be pretty powerful, pretty influential. If you have people who are willing to flaunt social norms, then even a few of them matter a lot. But it's not a few of them. It's tens of thousands. And so you can, like, this group does not have electoral viability, but what it does have is the ability to control the conversation online in any open channel. And that's a big hammer. That's a big deal. And you have to recognize and respect that. If you don't, you're just fooling yourself. And that's what you see the conservatives doing over and over again. Hopefully that'll end, and they'll understand that you can't say it's just online. The term just online is one of the most infuriating to me right now, because I think that you could almost say the opposite. Like, things are just real life. It's just real life. It's not online. It hardly matters. If it's not online, it's hardly real.
There was this really awful YouTube video that came out a couple weeks ago. People were literally spraying police officers with water, super soakers, all that stuff. I think it was towards the end of the summer.
That was in New York, that spraying event.
And the saddest
Can
thing
you
about
guys
that
hear
video
me?
was that these officers...
Hey, yeah, I can hear you.
Yep.
Okay, that was my fast experimentation. Finally.
You're a bit robot-y. Hi there.
Okay.
Josh. I think this is
okay,
the
I'll
first
mess with it.
first time you've been on Voice, right? A Kyle Channel exclusive.
Yeah, this is hot off the press. Let me see if I can mess with my modulation and all that.
It sounds like maybe the connection is less than ideal, because there's that robot thing that just swings in occasionally. But no problem. Say whatever you want, whenever you want. Enjoy. Let's see.
Unfortunately, I was just trying to solve technical problems, but let me see here.
Now it's good. That last sentence was great.
I wonder why it's messed up. I'm not even sure why it fixed itself, to be honest with you.
Yeah, the internet. There's this guy named Jonathan Blow who talks about how basically everything is made of, duct tape and gum stuck together, like
yeah.
Fundamentally, it's just not very reliable. We're building these castles on sand, but move fast and break things, as they say.
How well things hold up when you find out how they're actually built.
Right.
Whether they're physical things or institutions.
Right. It is kind of astonishing. Like, yeah, given the shenanigans that goes on.
Well, I'm always amazed when things work to my level of expectation. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's one thing if they work at all, but it's another thing if you like them. You're like, oh, that's really good.
Right. Yeah.
Let's see.
Fletcher says, I agree in some ways, Kyle. I don't like the idea of banning even the most atrocious wignats because it further emboldens them. Yeah, banning is not my strategy. I think that the best disinfectant is sunlight. That's a trope that I think is true.
I think that you have an ability to kind of do like a denial of service where they just flood everything, every channel of discourse, and essentially grab all the attention by making sure all your time is spent trying to debate them and debunk them. And I think at some point
one thing that I would say is that I'm extremely elitist.
Value in throttling.
Like so I I don't really care about chat plebs that much. Like, if you're annoying me and you won't come on Voice, especially if your arguments on chat are not well thought out, then I might ban you just for being annoying. I don't respect plebs. I respect people who will put effort into the conversation. And so I would find it grating if I were to, like, I would do it if I had to, but I find the idea of banning someone who comes in Voice and is polite but objects, constantly, I would find that would grate very harshly against my nature. Because if someone is willing to engage, right, I feel a duty to engage them. But these people, if anyone has ever tested that, it's these people, because of their propensity to lie. The lies really try my patience. Here we go. Kyle, I don't respect plebs, Roland. True. I don't respect plebs. Better mic up. Better mic up if you want the respect. Here we go.
I think people are afraid to clam up to go on a public forum. You know what I mean? It takes it takes some confidence.
There was this instance where JF Gariepi was taking a stance that was like not hard right enough, and his whole chat was like, "You're a cuck, you're a cuck, you're a cuck," and he said, "Okay, come on Voice and explain to me." And the only people who would come on Voice were people who actually supported him, the few who actually supported him. So yeah, like, it's rare that these chat warriors who are so tough in the chat are actually willing to come on and debate things. It's kind of a rare person who will come on, even on voice. Even that level of investment is usually too much. So yeah.
Yeah, I believe it's equally as anxiety ridden as walking up to a podium in front of people.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, for my part, I've done both, and getting on Luke's stream was very nerve wracking.
Yeah, and you seem very calm. You seem like you have the ability to compose your thoughts and share a body of knowledge. You don't seem like you're affected by it. But I've heard people come on multiple streams where they had a lot to say in chat, and then all of a sudden that verbal fluidity and all that stuff just abandoned them the moment they had to be held accountable on audio. You know.
Yeah, that definitely happens. Yeah. So yeah, I
Or
think.
the
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I've found that I am pretty adept at public speaking at this point, where if I'm making a pre-prepared speech or even just an impromptu speech, I can do that quite effectively. But I am not as good at interactive public conversations, and so that's kind of something that I feel this is a good practice experience for that.
Absolutely. Kyle, I got a question for you. We're watching this video and we're talking about like well, let me ask something. On our side of the spectrum, we fully accept that there's going to be gay people, that there's going to be other ethno-demographics and all that stuff. But on what we call the left end of the spectrum, they just simply want to weaponize these groups.
Yep.
And beat us over the head with it. And I don't even know anybody in my sphere of influence, nobody, that's anti-gay, anti-black. I mean, they've just become political leverage at this point.
Right. Yeah, like this is something that Douglas Murray pointed to. Like once gays were accepted, it was not enough, and it was time to move on to trans. So that definitely is happening, right? That testing of the boundaries. Once it's not shocking enough, you have to go even further. And I think that Milo was actually a big part of that, despite Milo being on the right. And this process is not like it's politicized, but Milo was a force for the right. And so a lot of this is kind of like noise in the background that does not inherently have a crushing political valence. And it's why, like, kind of in some senses, the most reactionary stance you can have is just, dude, your sexuality is boring. I don't care.
Right. I don't like to ever quote Gavin McInnes, but he said that I am not homophobic, I am homo bored.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's the
Absolutely.
But and that's how I feel about it. But the only reason I wanted to address that is because it seems like this has crept into the people that I know in my real world friends, where they lack curiosity, they're incurious people, they're swept up in feelings. And like in the last 3 years, I've found myself at odds with like my sister. You know, she thinks,
yeah,
I'm not alt left, so therefore I'm a Nazi,
yeah,
or something like that.
I've seen in my personal life, I've interacted with people who have that same issue. Like recently, a lot of people are telling that story about how things have turned sour in terms of talking politics. Even people who are not like far right, or who are not particularly heterodox, they're experiencing a lot of that issue. And I think that it's obviously connected to the extreme polarization that we're seeing, and it's a sad thing when it happens for loved ones, you know. And I've had that experience myself as well.
I heard you say something not too long ago about people that are completely apolitical getting, you know, they don't have a political mindset at all, and yet somehow they're willing to go to the mat over Trump's racist or something like that. It's really weird.
And even
that's just
go ahead.
I think that's just normal, like decent people being decent, where if they hear that Trump's racist and they have a strong reason to believe that, that reason potentially just being that they've been told that by people that they would normally trust, then it's kind of natural to actually care about that a lot.
Oh, Sure.
And what's funny is, and I hear this story again and again, often the people who are who are catching religion on this politics stuff were extremely politically incorrect before, just as a matter of course. They
Yeah.
didn't recognize the religion, and so they did all these sorts of things. And now it's almost like a fear reaction where they have to overcompensate the other way. This is in some cases, not in all, obviously. But yeah, it's a very sad thing. And like the advice that I always give is like try to remember that a lot of people have good relationships with people who disagree with them politically, and it mirrors what you see with like cults, right? Like you can, if you just hold your ground but don't make it an aggressive fight, then a lot of differences can be survived in terms of keeping a good relationship. You just have to remember it. It's like talking to a kid in a sense. Like the kid can flagrantly violate certain norms, but if you're gonna let that wash over you, then and respond in a measured manner, then often you might be one of the few who responds in a measured manner to that sort of strident attack. And so yeah, there's hope in my opinion.
And now, do you think, would you agree, the internet is very good at pulling off illusions, especially social media. It's not really half the country versus half the country, right? Isn't it more like...
No. More
right,
like 5% versus another 5%.
Right.
But I've talked about this actually with a friend of mine recently, and my take, I think, was like... There's often this thing that's said that like the centrists, like the people on the fringes are crazy and they just need the people in the center to bring them back to sanity. But I fundamentally, subscribe to an analogy, which is like we're seeing an accusation be levied by one of the major political factions that our country is evil and crippling and kind of analogous to a doctor who cripples children under his care in order to perpetuate a class system, right? It's fundamentally it's that kind of allegation which was, in large part behind the Russian Revolution, for example, and the way that the French Revolution progressed, where these sort of invidious lies are being perpetrated. And I don't subscribe to the notion that we're going to fall into the same pit as these countries, but it's still something that has a lot of moral relevance to me. I think that it's unacceptable, and I think that it's reasonable to be politically charged in an environment like this, and it's almost unreasonable to ignore politics. It seems like to ignore politics at this point is almost to ignore morality, and so I disagree with the notion that the center has it right. I think that the right has it right, and that's considered a very arrogant statement to make and one that doesn't have perspective. But I think that the more I sort of parse out the morality of this issue, and in particular when I analogize it to situations in the past, I have to say I just think that there is a straightforward right side and wrong side when this allegation is made and the allegation is false.
Oh, dude, absolutely. I mean, I I don't anybody proclaiming themselves to be a political isolationist right now, or immune to it, or they're coasting above all the problems on intellectual brain power and all that stuff. Like, I don't even trust them. I'm like, dude, there's a lot at stake right now. There's speech at stake. There's political persecution at stake. There's what's the country going to look like demographically. There's a lot of stuff that's very serious, and there's some very kind of let's just call them control freaks that tend to have power above all other things.
Yep.
And they don't really care if the middle class, working class, or any of us, fold before it. And I don't think they do. I think this is the time to be political and to be loud.
Right.
I
agree.
really
I wouldn't
do.
go so far as to say I don't trust people who are not political, because there is that kind of people who just want to build things, want to build their life, right? In a sense, there's virtue in that, or not in a sense. There is virtue in that, and I just want them to wake up, right?
I see what you're saying.
I wouldn't say that I don't trust them, because a lot of the best people who I know are that sort who just want to build their own life, but I think that they're ignoring a fire that's going to consume the town, or okay, I'm being too hyperbolic there. They're ignoring something that should not be ignored fundamentally, and it shows
No,
blindness to ignore it.
I actually I think you're right. What I meant to say was I think people were being dishonest about their position because I just don't know anybody who's looking at the tides of politics and culture who actually feels nothing
Right.
or is neutral. But I think you're not being hyperbolic. You're more correct about that.
Right.
You know, like I said, just that videos you were watching earlier where we were looking at sort of a leftist Marxist indoctrination of children via transhuman people. And I don't know what the motive is there, but the jury's been in for quite a long time that you don't sexualize children. You don't heterosexualize them. You
Right.
don't homosexualize them. You let them develop.
And
And
so often the parents of these
those
children, these trans children, have these very public sex lives and very public strong stances on sexuality and gender, and it's just so pathological to involve your child in that.
and do you think that's liberal uniformitarianism, like people just conforming that are weak-minded, or do you think it's like
I definitely
something?
don't think that it's like normie liberals who are doing this to their children. I think it's a very particular sort of person, like a particular set of personality disorders or experiences, perhaps past abuse. I don't think that it's like a normie liberal thing to do to your child at all.
I agree.
Because it gets sold like that. That's why I asked you
Yep.
that. People act like the left kills, whatever. And I'm like, well, I'm not really sure about that. I think some very tiny demographics have the loudest voice right now.
Yep, for sure.
And I don't know, but again, so I'm introducing sexuality or deviant sexuality to children, and any clinical psychologist and many other fields of the wellness of the mind will tell you you don't sexualize kids in any way.
Yep.
You let them discover these things and you explain it to them. And because if anything, there's a host of bad things that can come with this, but one of the worst things is if they are sexualized early, they'll develop some very stunting coping skills, some very maladapted perspective. They'll skip over
Right.
their youth,
In general, what I am is like I'm down on nurture as having a strong effect. But one of the strongest effects or correlations that has ever been noted is just the correlation between child sexual abuse and dysfunction later on. Like that's one of the strongest that you can imagine. And I've heard this from basically all the mental health professionals or educated people who talk on this subject. It is an overwhelming correlation. And I'm sure that there's a lot of nature there, but it seems like if you're worried about your about the upbringing of children, this is one of the main places to focus.
Right, and like I wonder, like where's the empathy? Like I look at this issue recently with the kid. The father didn't have any say so about the kid, transitioning into a
Yeah,
girl and
the
taking
Texas case.
hormone block. The Texas case, and I think like if you swept all the cultural ideological noise off to one side, my jury, if I was the judge, when I swung the gavel, I would say I am not going to destroy this children's endocrine system and health because of some ideological nonsense.
I believe there was there good news on this front? Texas.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I heard there was good news. I don't have a link for you, but
yeah, I heard something like that.
The judge got so much pushback that she changed her mind.
Yeah. Well, that's good. If that, yeah, I hope that happened, and yeah, I mean, and it is deranging to good people to see this sort of thing happen, and it absolutely strengthens the most pathological elements of the right for this sort of thing to happen. And I don't want to give them more resonance than they should have, but you couldn't do better for inciting hatred and alienation of the society than by castrating little boys for because of these half-baked theories.
Right.
Perennial Koenig asks, what's the good news? I heard that there was a stay put on this, that like both parents have to agree for this to happen. That's what I heard.
I mean, Kyle, if you and I were to pretend we were parents right now and our son was behaving in an effeminate way or effete or whatever, I would insist that my son finish growing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no way I would interrupt their endocrine system and their brain and their.
Yeah.
And I don't. And somehow ideology or leftist ideology has enough sway, weight, and power to. I don't know. I kind of like, I'm a little bit of a sexist these days. I kind of feel like this is the agreeableness of women at work,
It's
where they.
definitely related to that harm care morality thing. I don't know if you've read about Haidt's moral foundations, and I'm not actually sure how much I like Haidt's moral foundations as a comprehensive theory. But one thing that I think is absolutely true is that we're moving towards harm care morality to the exclusion of all the rest. And that's very, very bad. It's very pathological. It doesn't work. You need to have more than the principle that you can't be mean to people, that you can't hurt people. Morality is more than that. And when you just say, oh, don't hurt the child, let them have what they want, or worse, let the parents have what they want, it's just not something that works.
Yeah, the actual morality is so much bigger than somebody getting offended by the word no or that doesn't work, you know. Um, but I don't know. I just, like I said, I see a lot of things slipping through the cracks of philosophical, moral, ethical behavior these days. And actually, I don't even hear people, Kyle, to be honest with you, I don't hear people talking about ethics.
No.
It's almost like that's like a bygone notion, and anybody who adheres to those ideas is, somebody to be taken advantage of. I don't, um,
Yeah.
Nobility, honor, courage. We were,
And
you've
that's
been
not
talking a
isolated
lot
to
tonight.
the left either.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you're
wish,
right, actually.
I wish there was more of
You're
that.
absolutely right. Unfortunately, you're absolutely right.
But I've been like turning in my mind like what the right approach is. I think it's important to be honorable and to be honest. But in terms of decorum, I don't know how to play it. Right? I don't know how to play it. I don't think that I can get away with just being polite. I think that
no.
I think that you have to speak very strongly in this environment, and so it's hard because I like the idea of kind of a gentlemanly society, because obviously the way that things turn into a crapshoot in the way it did between me and Brundle, for example, that's not going to be conducive to a rational conversation. But if you're the one to step back to be the doormat to let that happen, our lizard brains are not going to respect that person, right? So
yeah,
in a lot of ways, we're coasting on a society that was built with these very strong foundations and senses of honor and decorum that were founded in blood in many ways, like the way that the old European society worked, and the way that even it worked in early America, was that there was a real price for stepping out of these bounds. And so not stepping out of these bounds didn't mean that you were a pussy, but gradually that reputation is fading, and a lot of the social tech that we rest on is from a bygone era. Alex Delarge says, "Embrace Anglo supremacy." Well, I mean, I've been influenced in this regard. I'm very strongly pro Anglo right now. Like I've come to think of continental philosophy as coming from basically like the lips of a bloodstained cannibal. Like the reality is that Afro-Eurasia is the competitive place. It's the place where dog eats dog, right? If you look at the rest of the world, if you look at America, that's the place that gets screwed whenever there's immigration from Afro-Eurasia. But that has a corollary, which is because it's so red in tooth and claw, these countries and these philosophers always have to be ready for being backstabbed. Whereas the Anglos, they were kind of, because they were an island, and then we have America, they were able to develop a philosophy without constantly having to worry about their neck being slit if they turn their back for a moment. And so, yeah, I'm very pro-Anglo and pro-Anglo philosophy. And I find it amusing how so often Anglo moral dictums are repackaged as being from other places. And that happens surprisingly often. You'll have some Victorian housewives parable be restated as Sufi legend. And yeah, like it was Anglos that really invented modern morality as we now know it.
Yeah, you notice that the Anglo morality, if you dig a little bit deeper, it's something about love and cooperation, right? Right, mutual forgiveness, all this stuff. I think about like our ancestors went through 8 ice ages, where you may think that the survival of the fittest was the rule of thumb, but those conditions wiped the fittest out. It was love and cooperation. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
if
was
by
something.
fittest you mean like your isolationist Rambos. Yeah, you need to have these relationships.
And there's an ethics and there's a code. I think, people call it code, people call it morality, people call it brotherhood, but I think these things they sustain us better than anything else. I really do.
Yeah. And that sort of male-male cooperation, I think, is a large part of what's threatened by this new morality and this new social system. As I said before, it's not a coincidence that all the civilizations worth the name were monogamous and strongly monogamous. And so one of the things that makes me so angry when the people are so focused on these red herring issues is like we have a bleeding wound, a bleeding gash in our social fabric that really no one is trying to heal, right? You see Jordan Peterson talk about it a little bit, but people aren't really talking about it, People aren't really emphasizing that need.
No, Kyle, everybody wants to be allopathic. They want to talk about symptoms. No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
right.
Yeah. It's not, it doesn't get to the heart of the issue. And yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that gives me hope is that you don't have so many people getting to the heart of the issue. It's not the case that there are a lot of people who are absolutely like bang on in terms of what the problem is, but they're just not listened to. Or well, maybe it is, but there's not like people who have a huge reach who are talking about these things in a manner that is absolutely clear and focused. And so maybe if that happens, then there can be some sort of solution brought to the fore. Or at the very least, some sort of group can come up that does respect these things. But, yeah.
So you might expect there to be a sort of like a moral renaissance of some sort, or a moral philosophical renaissance that might come around?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful about that. I don't know if you caught the conversation between Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray a while back.
Just a clip of it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there were a couple of debates that happened, and they were pounding on this point. Peterson talks about how like the atheists have not provided an alternative, and that's very prominent in atheist thinking. There's no like second step there. When you hear Dawkins talk about like get rid of religion, like does he consider one of the things? I think he recently released a book about how you need to convince children not to be religious. But I'm actually old enough to have seen in real time how the dynamic works. Like I saw how there were these internet debates between the creationists and the religious people and the atheists like largely cleaned up those debates, but you see just an endless surge of people coming up who are strongly religious, and that's because that's who's having the children, bro. If you don't have children, you don't get a vote for the next round. And so like I can see that wave come in. You can see that on Twitter. You can see who's young and who's old, and the young people are overwhelmingly more religious. And if you see someone who's very strongly doctrinaire, often they're young. And that's what you're deciding to create in the next generation. And I don't hate religious people. I don't object to religion qua religion. But if you want to have a rationalist perspective, it needs to take into account the reality of a responsibility beyond your lifetime, right?
And the fact that our ancestors, on intuition alone, who knows whether they had direct felt experience with God or not, they came up with this overarching authority about morality. All peoples did. They all did. They all came up with. I'm not suggesting they were all good.
You need a speaker.
But
if that speaker can at first be a great leader within your clan or within your tribe, but eventually it needs to go through the generations, and at that point you need a speaker beyond doubt, and that's God. And so,
Right.
what some hope for is to have reason be that speaker beyond doubt, and that's what Sam Harris says, is that reason will give this to you, and I disagree. I disagree fundamentally. I don't think that reason alone guides you to an answer about what should happen. But I do think that a soluble problem is to think about it, to first of all recognize that you are forced to make axioms, and that there's no causeless cause where you get to just bootstrap yourself up from nothing to an ideology, and that your ideology has to be functional in a Darwinistic way. So you have to choose axioms. You have to choose what you value. You have to choose kind of an aesthetic for your morality and for your society, and you have to ground that in reason and in Darwinism. And at that point, you might be getting somewhere. No one has really tried. It's never been tried. All of these utopian secular ideas, none of them have really taken into account, first of all, that they cannot bootstrap themselves from pure reason. It's impossible. And second of all, that they must take into account more generations than their own.
Yeah, this gets at a very deep point. These axiom and ideological structures, they have to go through a crucible of time. They have to prove themselves. They have to be recorded. They have to be shared. Proven that they work and all that stuff. But right now, it seems like anything that smacks of reason or wisdom on the social media bandwidth is, it's got to go. It doesn't work. It doesn't. It's offensive. It's patriarchal. It's
right. That's one of the deranging things about
sustain us.
Go ahead.
No, these are the things that sustain us, but we're trying to give that slogan, the future is female and all this gender identitarian politics, and I was like, I think our ancestors dug pretty deep. I don't know if you've read Bibles and scriptures and Sanskrits, but they if you strip it of its metaphysical properties, what's inside of it is something that works great.
Yeah, on the wisdom being rejected, I think it's the dementing effects of certain lies. When you tell lies about why men and women are different, you have to posit a whole world of oppression and conspiracy to explain the differences. And it's an absolutely destructive lie, which is held by people who try to be intellectually consistent and who trust science. And that's the damn thing about it, is that science is generally trustworthy, but the process can be short-circuited through two primary ways. One way is to threaten and discourage research in certain areas, and another is simply to ignore any outcome that doesn't jive with your perspective, because everyone is a stranger in a strange land coming into an unfamiliar field. So the gatekeepers of that field have the ability to just show you the things that they choose, the relevance and the importance that they choose to place upon them. And so, we are always
everything that tracks back to their agenda. Yeah, sure.
We're always fragile to that attack. We're always vulnerable to that attack. And what I think is, whenever people are coming into science who have this political agenda, who have this moralistic view of the world, as opposed to the kind of nerds and autists who started the whole enterprise, who were interested in the truth for the truth's sake, whenever you have that kind of ideologue infusion, you're making these fields worse than useless, and that's not understood. The sociology of science, I think, is very badly understood.
Oh yeah, I think, and you've got these workbench scientists of the world. They're acting like they're serving some worldwide collectivized religion. Docking, like you were saying, he was on Joe Rogan recently, and he really had to jump through some hoops to convince all of us that wisdom, spiritual precepts were nonsense. You know what I mean? He really had to kind of tell us that, like you were saying, reason won't solve the problem. We're human beings. We have a metaphysical inclination, if you want to call it that. There's this weird sensorium of what it is to be a person, and you're not going to figure it out with reductionist science. It's just not going to work. Well, that's my take on it.
Right.
You know,
Like,
and
and I think that Dawkins is like blissfully, he keeps himself blissfully ignorant of the deep problems that we see with science and politics now, right? With biased biased science interacting with politics, and it's absolutely destructive. Like, the gender stuff has the power to erase our cohesion as a society, and the environmental stuff has the power to erase our industrial capacity and our capacity to build as workers, right? Like, if you get these things wrong, the effects are absolutely deranging, and vice becomes virtue almost exactly. So when you tell a lie about how, yeah,
it's not like a mismeasurement. Like, you may talk to the average cosmologist, and he could tell you what the temperature regimes were on Zeta Reticules, but he doesn't know how he feels about his own marriage. You know what I mean? Like that. I know that's super hyperbolic, but
I think
you know what I mean? Like,
I have seen some wisdom arise from scientists who are looking at wisdom of the kind that you seem to be alluding to, in terms of evolutionary psychology, right? I mean, there is some of that, and also they're not scientists technically, but the people who talk about gender relations, feminism, the feminism MRA debates. You have some people who are in the middle who are very analytical and very they really try to understand the underpinnings of these relationships, and there's wisdom there. But you have to be trying for that, and most scientists are not. They're trying for something completely different. They're trying to be as divorced as possible from things that actually matter.
Well, and a lot of times what they have to say, they dress up as dispassionate empiricism, but the reality is that they're trying to reduce things down to equations, essentially, and measurement. Like, for instance, something like Occam's razor. I hear that invoked all the time, where they say they're talking about personal experiences, marriage, culture, and they'll invoke Occam's razor, and I'll say, hey, William of Occam's precept was exclusively for the measurement of matter and energy. It has no business in personal domains. And they'll look at me, I've said this to people a half dozen times, and they'll look at me like I've taken a shot at him. I'm like, no, I'm being serious. There was a constable in his time who thanked him for his precept because it had solved cases that he was investigating, and then William of Occam sent a letter back to him saying, well, that's unfortunate news, for that means a great many innocent people are being punished. My precepts for the observation of matter and energy. But then if you move forward, and you and I, Kyle, you're a very, very intelligent person, and I know you realize we're in a place where if you don't accept that reality, the universe, and all these things are subject to some laws discovered by some uptight white guys in powdered wigs, well, we're pseudo or something, We're, and it's so much deeper than that. It's like, I'm going to hang on to the Christian, the Judeo values. I'm going to keep studying the Torah and do the best I can to use those precepts, because science is not helping me with my relationship to my ex-wife.
Right. Yeah. I mean, people who disregard tradition tend to do extremely badly, and the reason why I'm not a traditionalist is I think that I believe that I can embrace many of the same values, but with a rational framework underneath it, and
I think you can create a 2.0.
Right.
I think you can take these things and make them palpable to a world that knows that Genesis isn't true, right?
I certainly hope so. I think that, the atheist movement was shockingly, blind to that need. Shockingly blind to that need, and in a sense that gives one hope, because if it hasn't been tried, or people haven't tried very hard, then there's a chance that it may be possible. But yeah, I would advise anyone who's not taking that route, or actually anyone, period. I would advise to have a great deal of respect for tradition, because it's very like the communities that eschew tradition so far have all been disasters, all of them.
Yeah, you have precisely zero examples of those civilizations surviving because they neglect God knows how many millennia of human nature being recorded in the form of tradition.
Have you heard of the Oneida
They don't
commune?
get it. This stuff was hard-fought knowledge to our ancestors. You know, this works, this doesn't.
Have you heard of the
And
Oneida commune?
What was that? You blacked out a little bit.
There's something called the Oneida Commune, which was in the 1800s. There was this free love movement, and they founded a co-op basically. Like a lot of things that you would think would only be crazy lefty things happening now happened a lot earlier, and this is one of those things where they had a system where like sex had to happen by appointment, but it couldn't be with the same person twice. Like you couldn't hog a person. You all had to be having sex with each other. Although the woman could always refuse. So sometimes obviously they'd be bouncing around.
Coordinated but optional.
Right. Well, you definitely couldn't like hog a woman, or a woman couldn't hog a man, but they did have the power to deny appointments, so-called appointments. But yeah, it was like entirely based around free love and not having any sort of durable relationships. And as you can imagine, it did not survive as a community. But it did survive in a certain form, just being because they were fairly intelligent and industrious people. They formed like a company basically, and that company survived for a long time. But their roots were in this free love commune. Mikey,
what is that? Sexual communism?
Right.
That's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, and it was in the 1800s, right? Like a lot of stuff in the 1700s and 1800s, like writing and like political and philosophical action, is like super duper radical. Like you would never dream that it would be anything but 2019 crazy far edge leftist stuff, but actually it was all showing up really quite early on.
Do you guys personally know an open relationship that worked?
No.
Yeah. I've watched a handful of them. And when they go down bad. We're talking like somebody goes to jail.
Jesus. Yeah, I haven't seen it that bad, but yeah, it doesn't seem to last. And I even saw like an article of this lady who wrote a big article about how poly was great, and then like 2 years later she wrote an article saying poly is terrible, and the only reason I was writing about it that way was because I was dreaming of having it all, and basically having security and all the fun I wanted.
So it's a form of greed? Like,
yeah.
You think you can have an open relationship and you could cast off tradition and ancestral, yeah. So it's just not going to, well, maybe it works for 0.1% of the population. Maybe.
And it depends what you mean by work. Like work with durable relationships, or just work in terms of having fun, right? That's one of the things about libertarians, by the way. Like Ayn Rand was in an open relationship, and you can see that in her books as well. So people often think that that's part of what's behind the reputation of libertarians is that kind of extreme antipathy towards tradition and towards closed borders and all that stuff. And it didn't serve her well, right? It didn't end very well, I think. Like she had a lot of drama in her life, a lot of misery as a result of that.
Yeah, I think she would have admitted that, but how interesting. You covered some interesting ground tonight. How late do you stream until?
Probably gonna hang out. Gonna stop pretty soon. I might play some music and let the stream end gracefully. But this was really fun. I'm glad you could come on. Glad you felt welcome on Discord. You can come on anytime.
I really appreciate your insights, man. That was good stuff. I think this is probably 50 times as much time as I spent on a stream. And the last time I went on a stream, I went on Clara Ka.
Oh yeah, that apparently is a spicy one.
And she invited me on because of something I said in chat, and then she couldn't take the heat because she's whatever her philosophy is, but I
secular Corianism, I believe.
Yeah, right.
Muslim, but
she couldn't.
Atheist Muslim.
She couldn't take the philosophical pressure, so she kicked me off stream within a minute.
Yep, that's what I've heard. But yeah, I might take a look at that. But on the other hand, I might try to build my own community, build up my own organization. But yeah, this was fun. Any last words,
Yeah,
Mike?
Kyle.
Go ahead.
You're about to log off.
Yeah, I'm gonna log off pretty soon, so I'll let you both have your last words.
Oh, all right.
Thanks for having me on, Kyle. It was a lot of fun, dude.
Excellent. Yeah, hope you can come on later on as well, Mike. Okay.
Last words. That whole drama between the Fuentes people, the Gropers or whatever, and the Charlie Kirks. I don't really like either one of those groups, but seeing them go at each other is pretty entertaining. Kind of
Oh yeah, and I wanted to ask you, what's your problem with the alt-light? You said you hated the alt-light, and I've never understood that. Like, I don't see anything to hate there. I see a lot to be dissatisfied with, but I don't.
Did I say I hate? Wait, did I say I hate them or did I say I don't like? Whatever.
You might have said you don't like them. I don't remember.
Well, I don't know. I liked Milo. I don't really like this Charlie Kirk guy. He seems like a caricature of, like him, Candace Owens. I mean, it's better
Candace Owens
that they're on the
is her own beast. Yeah, Candace Owens has her own vibe. I can't say that I dislike her, but yeah, she has her own situation.
Seem like caricatures, right? It's like they say
Candace definitely does.
They kind of like give their talking points.
Yeah,
and they really emphasize identity, right? Like as a black conservative woman.
Yeah,
and I kind of like.
They're very conventional, but the only complaint that I have about them is that they're more conventional than I'd like, and that's not enough for me to dislike them. But I guess that's a matter of opinion.
Yeah.
All right. Good to see you all.
One thing I had on my mind, which if you got to.
Yeah, I do gotta go,
Later.
but hope to see you later. Bye. Bye bye.
All right. Take care.
All right, gonna get off Discord. Discord. Gone. Great. Now I'm gonna play us out with some music, if I can find any. See if I can find any music to play. What do they have for me? Great. Sure it'll work.
Take it all back, hate the things that you said, 'cause I wish you didn't mean it. I'm under attack, running far away, and I'd rather keep my distance from you. You don't gotta lie to me to get through. Push and pull me off into the deep, and let's pretend that nothing ever happened on that night.